A famous person you've never heard of. I'm standing part way up London Road at number 69, looking at a beautiful old house with a beautiful garden and two beautiful trees. On the uppermost gatepost there's an oval plaque indicating that a person of historical significance once lived here. A Mr. Bayes moved into this house as a lodger in 1731. He lived here for the last 30 years of his life. His days in Tunbridge Wells became the most productive years of his life. Thomas Bayes was the son of a London Presbyterian minister, Joshua Bayes, and was perhaps born in Herefordshire. We're not too sure exactly when, because when a child is born, with the possible exception of Jesus Christ, nobody knows that he or she will contribute anything to the advancement of the human race, so the circumstances of birth are often not recorded very accurately. His birth date is uncertain also due to the fact that he was baptized in a dissenting church which either did not keep or was unable to preserve its baptismal records. We know nothing of his early life, but he was obviously well educated, as a minister's son would be expected to be. We do know for certain, however, that in 1719 he was enrolled at the University of Edinburgh to study logic and theology, and that after graduating in 1721 he moved to London, where he assisted his father in the latter's Presbyterian chapel. Working in the chapel for some 10 years, it became obvious that his father's nonconformist views had a great influence on son Thomas, and he moved around 1734 to Tunbridge Wells to become minister of the Mount Zion Chapel near Chapel Place, a position he held for nearly 20 years. So far so good, and it's not surprising that you haven't heard of him. After all, nonconformist ministers were 3 for 2pence in those days. Perhaps I can hear you asking, so what did he do that made him famous? His claim to fame was in the field of mathematics and statistical analysis. Today, religion and science would seem to be poles apart, but in those days the clergy were a select group of people who were well educated and had time on their hands. Many significant figures in science in the 17th and 18th centuries were men of the cloth. In those days little was known, at least by the common man, about risk management and chance. If you buy a lottery ticket, you have a vastly greater chance of being dead by the time the balls drop their numbers than ever you have of winning the fortune you promised yourself. In those days, Lady Luck was a very powerful force, and it was not considered by many that her goodwill could be determined by some mathematical jiggery-pokery. She either smiled on you or she didn't, and the vagaries of the female psyche were considered unfallible. No great change there then. Luck and chance were understood as being a factor, but little more. Questions such as, when you toss a coin and it comes up heads, what are the chances of it coming up heads next time, had never been answered. On the first throw it's either heads or tails, 50% chance of either, but what are the chances of it coming up heads on the second throw? And what are the chances of getting 3 heads in a row? And then on the 4th throw, what are the chances of another head appearing? Common sense might say that the chances of having yet another head would be slight, but we know today that common sense may well be wrong. The coin doesn't know it's been thrown before, and so it's still 50-50. Though if you change the question to what are the chances of having, say, 5 consecutive heads, it's a long way from 50-50. In 1700, no mathematics could analyse this type of problem in any depth. In our practical world, making some sense of chance and risk business has immense financial value. Say we make widgets and they sell for £1,000 each. We have some failures and our customers get very angry when we sell them a dud. The problem is, we have that the only way to test this particular type of widget also destroys it. If we make 1,000 widgets, how many do we have to test to destruction to have a failure rate of, say, 2%? At £1,000 a time, we don't want to test too many, but on the other hand, if we don't want to test too few and have angry customers. Bayesian probability is the name given to several related interpretations of probability, and Bayesian has been used in this sense since about 1950. Since its birth in the 1950s, advancement in computer technology have allowed scientists from many disciplines to pair traditional Bayesian statistics with what are known as random walk techniques. The use of the Bayes theorem has been extended in science and in other fields. It is accepted that he began the mathematical examination of risk, chance and probability, which is now used in modern statistical analysis. He only published 2 works in his lifetime: a theological work which has disappeared into obscurity, and an introduction to the doctrine of fluxions, and on the strength of that he was elected as a Fellow of the Royal Society in 1742. By 1755 he began to suffer ill health, and he died in Tunbridge in 1761 and was buried in Bunhill Fields Cemetery in Moorgate, London, where many nonconformists lie. Bayes never lived to see the publication of what would eventually make him a household name in the world of statistical analysis. On his death, his writings on probability theory were passed to his friend Richard Price, who, realizing their significance, had them published in 1763.